Yes, and the last, okay, what could be the third language in Hungary to ask, excuse. This project was invited again in a larger public art organization and event, and I decided to use Roma language, Roma Hungarian. First problem, that in the Roma language doesn't exist an equivalent of excuse me, sorry. They express it in a different way, so I had to find it. It's also something which is absolutely, let's say, normal or could be logical, but you wouldn't think about it, that this word is missing. And okay, everything, you know, this was the last one, and before that I counted, I made this project 11 different times. I knew exactly how to put it up, what are the things to concentrate, etc. And the day of the opening, I got a phone call that it cannot be exhibited because an expert said that it's dangerous to it's absolutely dangerous, this way of hanging. And it was an absolutely stupid situation. Okay, it lasted 6 weeks. Imagine, 6 weeks. I could find someone who gave a different expert, let's say, statement. That okay, it's dangerous it could be dangerous, but if I cut 60 centimeters of that horizontal road, then it would be okay. And imagine, this road is, I mean, it's, you can imagine, you can't really see from this particular image, it's rather long. It's like 3.5 meters. So taking off 60 centimeters is nothing. So, okay, I said. But if you look behind, so all the Hungarian, all the other language could be the same in that sense, and the Roma Hungarian version should be a little bit shorter. So it tells, at least to me, lots about the attitude toward other people, especially Roma people. It's like this penis envy of Freud. Okay, the last piece I will mention is not that. Now I have to switch to the other. Yes. Okay, this is a stencil I made in 2007. Normally I'm not making, or actually I'm not making street art. I do public art. There is a huge difference between street art and public art. Street art is anonymous, public art is not. And I was invited with this stencil to an exhibition in the Kunsthalle. It was a big group exhibition of let's say, progressive art, and this was my contribution. You can see I show the exhibition interior. I couldn't make a better image, but I thought that it's not right if I use this warm conditions environment of the light cube, and I put this the same stencil in 2 different art institutions in Budapest, private art institutions. If you want, I can tell you the context of those private art institutions in details. I would skip this story. Believe me, they were absolutely corrupt and hypercritical. They just used contemporary art, young art, as a very good PR opportunity. They were very rich people, and they just humiliated experts and artists, young artists. So, and there was a huge controversy, even in the Hungarian press. There were some articles on their activity, but nothing had happened. And this was one of the art institutions. This institution sued me later, or they were accusing me of vandalizing their building, you know, a contemporary art institution. And as they learned that I'm the person, because I didn't hide it, so I was searched by the police. I had to go there. They took mugshots and fingerprints and all the usual stuff, because as they learned that I made it, they make an incredible high and absolutely irrealistically high damage, like 1.5 million forints, which is at the end of the whole process, it came out that the proper damage was about 10,000 forints. And it's about almost 8,000 US dollars. And the case was heard in the court in 2011, and I admitted that I did it, and I made a statement that it's not vandalism, but it's a kind of a public artwork, and especially because of this, it's socially useful, generating discussion, and tries to stop this controversial art management activity of that particular institution. Actually, this was true, because through this whole scandal, the institution stopped its activity and gave back artworks to those contracted artists who didn't want to work with them further. Previously, they didn't do this. And in the meantime, I got an incredible amount of signs of solidarity. Unknown people send me SMS and that sort of, let's say, personal. And the director of the Budapest Ludwig Museum bought a paper version of this work. So I put it on paper. So it was during those court hearings, it was exhibited in the Ludwig Museum at the same time. And one of the leading Hungarian contemporary art collectors also bought it. Just to know what are those images, the institution called VAM Design, and they tried to cover, and they made much bigger damage on the wall with this very amateur hiding. You can see different phases of, because there were always people who took it off because they know that there is something behind it. Once I was biking there, and I just caught the moment when someone put this guy in this striped t-shirt, put a new one. Okay. This was a huge exhibition of Hungarian private collectors, and this collector who bought it deliberately put it into the middle of the exhibition. And again, it gained a context which I couldn't make, because I wouldn't exhibit in there, I had no access to that exhibition, so it was absolutely their decision. And the original meaning, which was a reflection about that the street artist's gallery is the street, and washing down graffiti is a very good business, and especially for those companies who are selling paint on one hand and doing the graffiti cleaning business as well. It got a context of art collecting. Yesterday with someone we were discussing the Marx collection, which is the basis of the Berliner Hamburger Bahnhof exhibition hall. And probably he's not the only one, but he's a typical collector whose wealth was absolutely questioned when he started to collect, because he was responsible for the miserable situation of many people in Berlin, because he's a real estate tycoon. So money and exploitation, money and blood, they go together. And especially in art collection, I mean, even in art collection. But they didn't complain. No one complained during those days when it was in this very central position. In the meantime, it was exhibited in different ways. This is in the Ludwig Museum. A part of my testimony, what I gave the police, I made a digital print, and it's also part of this work. Those are some signs of solidarity from that time. It's an artist friend who wanted to make an action like this. Okay, and then on the court I got 5 months in prison because it's so dangerous to the society. And it was suspended for 2 years. And at the very end, without any interference, I had a very good lawyer firm, very elite, professional, and they do it for pro bono, for free, for me. And when they stepped into the whole process, on one day I received a letter from the court that without any hearing, any trial, they changed the 5 months prison to 1 year probation. So I'm now over it, so I can do again what I want to do. But it was a very stressful time from this point, and I got again lots of signs of similarity. Again, something which I couldn't really reach by myself. So it's other people's actions are adding new and new meanings in a, let's say, in a lucky situation. This is the Württembergische Kunstverein, and if you see on the entrance, I was asked on both entrances of the building to put out this "Wash your dirty money with my art." This was another exhibition. I used to exhibit. If I exhibit, that I spray it on the wall and I leave 1 or 2 schablons, and people can rent it, take it away and bring it back and put out wherever they want. I mean, it's a good task for the future lawyers. It's something again very kind. In Moldavia, Chisinau, an activist who has a fantastic program. He asked me the permission just to use the text, and he exhibited it in their study exhibition place, which is this strange little section of a panel balcony on the ground. So if Oberlicht, if you want to know more about it, I mean the whole organization, their name is Oberlicht. It's Prague. There was an exhibition with a perfect title, Lucifer Effect. based on Zimbardo, and that was an international group show, and I was invited and I was asked to put it exactly in that, on the entrance of the building. Okay, I guess I close it now. Thank you for your attention. I would like to give you some time for your questions. And I think I mentioned everything I wanted to mention, and finishing it, I just want to say what I said at the beginning, that to react to a situation requires a different, a better, a stronger awareness, and that's what I think about, or that's why I mentioned this this term, situation specific art. I think those works, and not just mine, of course. I could mention lots of others, but I was asked to bring up some examples of my practice, could be interpreted in that way. So thank you again, and feel free to comment or making your questions.
So why have you decided to stay in Hungary, opposed to traveling somewhere else or something? Because your work could be anywhere, but why have you chosen to be there?
It's an excellent question. Thank you. You know, I grew up in a situation where leaving the country was absolutely on the agenda. So, because of family reasons, I mean, my family and my relatives weren't really liked by the Kader regime, so they were marginalized somehow. Plus, I have relatives in Germany, Austria. So it was always an option throughout the 80s when I was allowed to travel. So. Even my parents told me before I left a trip that please don't worry about us. If you would like to stay abroad, do this. They meant it because if someone was emigrating, the parents, the closest relatives, weren't allowed to travel for 5 years. So that meant that people cannot see each other for 5 years for sure. And I came back because I belonged to the, let's say, the unofficial countercultural underground of that time. Those were my formative years, beginning of 80s or throughout the 80s. And simply I found it much more exciting. I spoke about this very shortly in the masterclass. So I've seen the problem being in the periphery, which means Hungary, in the center, or going to the center, which would mean Berlin, whatever, but staying at the periphery. And since Hungary was in an upcoming atmosphere, so it was really fantastic that as I realized my ambitions, I realized that there are no obstacles anymore. So maybe my generation was the first one who was really accustomed to this situation, because the previous generations had lots of aborted ambitions, and you know, if someone doesn't fulfill their ambition in a certain age, certain ambitions, that it cannot be replaced later. So this is about the past. And about the present, I don't know how familiar you are with the very miserable situation of Hungary. I have to tell you that now I'm really playing with the opportunity, or keeping this opportunity open, because very soon it could reach a point where I say that I wouldn't wouldn't express any sympathy with the system, and then the easiest way to demonstrate to leave the country. But quite honestly, I would never ever think that such a situation, such a state could come in my lifetime. So it's. But being okay, another point that you know, since I was socialized in this countercultural situation, it's you know, the situation of today reminds me a lot of that. So my experiences, what I learned, I got that time, are somehow useful again, and it's always until a certain point, of course, it's always very exciting or funny to provoke a very narrow-minded, very stupid environment. So as far as I can, I do, but really in the last couple of months I became a bit uncertain from that point. Oh yes, please.
You said a question around the 80s. I know that in Hungary there were these flying universities similar to Poland, and I'm wondering what role artists played within those, if any.
You mean education, art education universities, or in general?
No, I mean the flying universities that were.
Flying university?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, look, putting it in a very short way, in 80s there was a very special situation in Hungary. You know, after 56, the revolution, although it was a so-called unsuccessful revolution, but the leaders, the political leaders, they understood that something has changed forever. And this and some other effects led to the situation that in my formative years, if someone could have an access to this, let's say, unofficial artwork, in German they use the term zweite Öffentlichkeit. It's hard to translate into English because it would be second publicity. It's a bit. So it's not the perfect one, but anyway, and that meant that if you had an access to one of the elements of that, let's say, unofficial scene, then you had an access for all the others. And it formed a very vivid, a very colorful, very exciting, and very complete, let's say, a little second society, a countercultural society with gossips, with stars, and from experimental cinema to band rock and roll. You can't hear in radio programs and just in live. And of course, flying university lectures, contemporary music, contemporary theater, performance, exhibitions, etc., etc. So it formed a very strong and a very broad living ring among the very closed off, rigid center of attention, which was the mainstream. And the universities were, anyway, so it's, in my case, the art university was absolutely conservative, and at the end I was kicked out with all of my friends. I mean, not in the same time, but those people who belong to that, let's say, unofficial art scene, they were somehow all kicked out in different times. It was a strategy. Don't kick them out in the same time, because it would cause a bigger attention at the time, slowly.
I have a technical question, or maybe I missed something, but the first examples you gave were of graffiti works that had been applied during the old regime and were there for a long time, right? like the Joy Division and
yeah.
yeah. Why were they never removed, or why were they not painted over when the regime was so much against graffiti?
That's fantastic. I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer. I watched and I used to collect street interventions, street markings, illegal signs. I have a collection of lost, handmade or privately made lost A4 posters, you know, lost keychain and lost animal, etc. I don't know. So it's that's why they were so exciting for me. So imagine a city which has a structure, visual structure and the physical structure as a real big city, as a metropolis, and no signs of that kind, no graffiti, bombing, and nothing. It came just in the early 90s, the classical graffiti, and here and there, like, and you know, there were some very special graffitis made, for instance, in the Second World War, and they were up for a very long time, like a Cyrillic stencil saying that there are no landmines, or some early Stalinist text graffitis that more communist into the government. And they were there for 20 years.
Same question for the text you put on the art institution or the art space. Why didn't they just paint it over or remove it with removal?
I told you that I left out lots of little details. So unofficially I put out in two different places. One place immediately painted it over because I realized that it's not something it's reverse to go in because it's a slippery territory. Anything could happen. It's better to forget it. They are more professional, and the other, which sued me, they didn't. I think they could cause a very special situation if they don't go to the police, but they approach me and they say that, oh, we have a work of you, please sign it, and we cut it out and we will sell it, because this was their basic attitude. But it made it clear that the guy who invented this art institution, he really hated art. He wanted to have some excuse that he is a generous partner of poor young art students. Because that was, let me explain it, it's just very shortly, that his strategy was, he made a statement that in Hungary, to be successful, you need 20 years. No question what is successful, what does it mean? I mean, it's such a stupid statement. But he can shorten it to 2.5 years. You know, this is what you used to call snake oil, you know, of course. And when he was asked what is his brilliant idea, he told that, for instance, he can publish some A4 organizers for business people, and to every month you can have an artwork, and that makes really propels the artist into the highest level of success.
I hope there's not one more question, but I hope that we could maybe discuss this further of the coffee break, because we have coffee waiting outside.
I'm very flexible.
Is it a short question that you have?
The question is short. I'm not sure about it.
Okay, so let's